Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this Sunday's rendition of Speak Your Mind with host Larry Cox. And tonight we do have a special guest. Tonight we have State Senator Emanuel Jones, who is running for Congress. He is running for the 13th Congressional District here in Georgia, which is 100% of Rockdale County. So Rockdale County is one of the counties that belong to the 13th, and 100% of Rockdale County is in the 13th. So it'll be a great opportunity for you listeners tonight to be able to have someone running for Congress on the show who has actually been a leader in the state of Georgia. He's been in the state Senate since 2004. So he knows his way around legislative abilities. So we're going to just say, hey, great opportunity to talk to our neighbor, State Senator Emanuel Jones from Henry County. So why don't you guys do me a favor, like we always do, share, like this show, so that we can get the party going. And what I'm going to do real quick is I'll say hello to you guys before I bring the senator in and let him introduce himself. So good evening, Vuka Russo. Nice to have you here tonight. Ben and Cheryl Garcia, great to see you here. Mr. Justin Kinney, my colleague on the Rockdale County Board of Education, great to have you here this evening, Justin. I know you and the family had spent some time in Florida this weekend. Great to see you made it back safely. Clayton Orwig, great to have you here this evening, Clayton. Mary Boysworth, great to have you, Mary. Reg Griffin, great to see you here today. Bill Campbell, great to see you. Pamela Swan, great to see you. Charlotte Gellert, great to have you. Marie Withers, great to have you here today. Now, let me go ahead and bring in Senator Jones here real quick. And look, there we go with the magic of streaming.
Hello.
Senator Jones is live in your living rooms or wherever you are. Senator Jones, thanks for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me.
It's a privilege. So, Senator, why don't I give you a few minutes to give your own little bio to the folks out there, so who may not be familiar with you, because you are a Henry, and the most of the folks that watch our show are from Rockdale County, and
Sure.
we really want to get to know the folks of Rockdale County because they're 66,000 voters strong, and you're vying for a lot of those votes.
You're right. I really, really do. And thank you for even inviting me to have an opportunity to be on your show. I would say I may be new to your show, Larry, but I'm not new to Georgia. I was born and raised here.
No, you're not new to Georgia, but the folks of Rockdale County are a little bit laser focused on their own little things, so they don't really pay attention to what's going on in Henry County.
Sure. But I was born in Atlanta. I went to school. I finished West Fulton High School back in 1977. I matriculated from West Fulton. And all of my family still lives in Atlanta, by the way. And I tell people my parents are buried in this red clay. I'm going to be buried in it as well. And I had an opportunity to matriculate to some really fine universities after being a class valedictorian. And I went to my undergrad as an electrical engineer from the University of Pennsylvania. While I was there in my undergrad, I got commissioned as a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers my junior year. As you can tell, I really needed a job. And from there, I spent 19 years in the Army Reserve. Thankfully, I never got activated to active duty. I rose to the rank of captain. And after my studies at UPenn, I moved to New York and accepted a career position with IBM. I was a double E and just knew that was the career I wanted to pursue. But God had different plans for me because after a couple of years, I made a decision to go back to graduate school. I went to Columbia University in New York City, where I pursued my degree in MBA in finance and accounting, which led me to a career position with Arthur Andersen, which eventually led me to, I was a little country boy from Georgia living up in the big city, and I realized that really wasn't what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And I had an opportunity to join the Minority Dealer Training Program with Ford Motor Company 35 years ago. And I didn't have any money. I didn't have a whole lot of money, but I always believed in working for myself because I taught myself skills that were needed to repair homes, and I would go out and find me a little fixer-me-upper. I would put in that sweat equity, and out of that sweat equity, as you know, you buy the worst home in the best neighborhood, and if you fix it up, the value is going to appreciate. I did complete my MBA at Columbia, and I did that a number of times, and I was able to make enough as a side hustle, if you will, a side job. And that's the down payment that I used 33 years ago when I purchased my dealership, when I had an opportunity to move me and my family, had a son, and was married, and my other two kids were birthed here in Israel, Clay, like me. And we moved back to Georgia 33 years ago, and the very first opportunity was my Ford dealership. Thankfully, I partnered with Ford Motor Company. With money I didn't have, I paid them off in about 3.5 years, and I've continued to operate that dealership and open up others and buy and sell during my 33-year history in business. So that's kind of who I am. I was called, having served in the community and done a lot of work in the community 24 years ago. I had this calling on my head to run for public office is my way of kind of giving back to the community that had given so much to me and my family. And I made a decision to run for the state senate at the urging of a really good friend of mine, and that was Samuel Tillman, who had been in politics much longer than I had ever been around. And Sam was my mentor, and he introduced me to a lot of good people. So 24 years ago, 23 years ago, I made the decision to run for office at the very first time. I ran for the state senate. That was a quasi-incumbent. Most of the district was in DeKalb County, very small portion, only about 30% was in Henry County. So I knew I had to go out and defeat those other 5 candidates that was in the race that all were from DeKalb County. And I'm little old Emmanuel here from Henry. And that was the height of Vernon Jones and his power. And I remember Vernon, who went on to become a good friend before he left our party, by the way, was actively supporting another candidate, George Maddox, who had been in the race, had been in the House, and he was running for this Senate seat. He and I entered into a runoff. And that 30% in Henry County that I got, because I swept most of those votes, and that gave me the edge to defeat him. We split the votes in DeKalb. And that's how I got elected to the Senate 23 years ago. And I've been there ever since, representing the 10th State Senate District.
Now, had it always been the 10th, or did they rename it at some point?
Mine has always been the 10th.
Always been. You've always been the 10th.
The others, but mine have always stayed the 10th.
Yeah, they maneuvered around you and beside you and upside down. And you and I had a little discussion off air about all the redistricting stuff, that whatever, but yours has maintained, even though some of the geographic boundaries have changed. The 10th has you've always held that Senate title.
That is correct. And right now, the 10th State Senate District, a very small portion of it is only I used to represent McDonough in Henry County. Now I represent parts of Stockbridge, and the district goes north all the way up through North DeKalb, up through the Claremont area, the Metlock home subdivisions up in that area. The VA hospital is in the 10th State Senate District now. So the district has changed tremendously. And last year I ran in the district, and I single-handedly defeated the Republican candidate that ran against me.
Gotcha. So and then here we are today, and you've decided that, after serving in the state Senate since 2004, you're going to run for the United States Congressional District. And we talked about 13, and it's one of these districts that sort of got moved around and shifted and such.
You can say that.
Yeah, and Dale, which is, you're in the 13th now, was one time 4th district. It was, all the 4th. Now it's all of the 13th. And, the folks of Rockdale County have felt a little bit slighted for a long time, but they don't feel they've had representation. I'm just putting it out there, about 20 years, right? So So, but and then that's one of the things you and I talked about, and what really, uh, I felt strong about inviting you on, Senators. You talked about you mentioned that presence, that you felt the district needed someone who was present. Would you elaborate a little bit
I'll
on
be
that?
glad to. First of all, my home, I live right off of Highway 155. I can throw a rock and hit Rockdale County backwards. I'm right on the Henry DeKalb County line. And I would tell you, uh, I would like to think that I've been accessible to members to those that I represent in the 10 state senate district. My record, which I'm running on for the state senate, and the work that I've done in this great state has touched a lot of people. It's touched a lot of lives. Um, and I've been really, really proud of the work that I've done in the General Assembly. And I think I've been successful in the General Assembly because I've been hands-on. I don't have a whole lot of staff that works for me. On my business card from the state senate, my cell phone has always been on that. People call me and they're like, I want to speak to Senator Jones. And I said, speaking. They said, no, I really want to speak to Senator Jones. I don't quite understand it. But that, to me, is the kind of accessibility that anyone that votes for you and supports you politically should have. We are the conduit for a lot of resources, in this case, my case now, the state government and the state coffers to the community. And certainly that applies at the federal level on a much greater level because the federal government has a lot more resources that we have to compete to get in these congressional districts so that we can be active and support the opportunities we have in the 13th congressional district. The current occupant of the 13th has been a good friend of mine for a long, long time. I remember when he was elected 24 years ago. And I strongly, if you look at my voter record, you'll see that I even supported Congressman Scott. But there comes a time in all of our lives when we should be called to do something else. And it's not a secret to anyone that Congressman Scott has had some challenges in his life. And I would hope and pray that when that ever happened to me, that someone would kind of tap me on the shoulder and say, Senator Jones, you've been a good servant. But now it's time for you to reach out to other people that can do the work that you may be unable to do.
Have we heard whether he, because we've not heard anything whether he's going to actually seek re-election? Have we heard? I mean, Senator, I've heard of at least 13 to 15 people that have already lined up to run against, to run for that
That's
seat.
Correct.
Has Congressman Scott seen the writing on the wall? Do you think? I mean, I think there were only 6 or 7 last time, but this 13, you and I both know the numbers and how it works in Georgia. That's runoff land, and even if he does run, he will not survive this election.
I would never ever speak for my friend.
I did not know if you've heard anything through the grapevine.
I've heard a lot, but I don't put my ear to that grapevine. I think at the appropriate time, I think Congressman Scott with his family and his God will make the best decision that's best for him and his family.
I, as a constituent of the 13th, I urge him to step away. That your time has come and gone, and that it's no disrespect, but your time has come and gone, and we have too many politicians who hang on into their 80s, who do not even know they are mentally there anymore, and that I have a friend of mine who was on a staff of a certain representative that the last couple of years that person was there, they would drop their hand over the button to cast their vote. And you can't make that up because that was reality and that happened. And then you had the realization that we found out that the congressman hasn't even voted in the last 6 times he could have voted. And that is also telling. So I do think whether he acknowledges it's time to step away, I think the fact that you have 13 to 15 people who are going to
Mhm.
run, I think the constituents of the 13th are going to
But
speak
the reason why
and say it's
the
time.
reason why I got in the race is that I've sensed that there is a need for someone to be a lot more active. David has always represented my home where I live up in Ellingwood. And I can tell you that I've not been able to reach out and get in contact with my congressman. And I would hope that no constituent that lends their support to a candidate would ever say that. It's not enough.
Well, I'll tell you, you mentioned something earlier about answering the phone and being accessible. You and I traded contact information a few weeks ago. I don't
Mhm.
think you put me in your phone. I didn't put you in my phone, but I called you yesterday because I'd sent an email last week and I thought maybe it went to spam. It was about the link. You answered the phone. Hello, this is Emmanuel. Folks, he did. He really did. He answered the phone and said, "Hello, this is Emmanuel." And I said, "Hello, Senator Jones. How are you?" And I think he even said something. Well, no, this is Senator Jones. And I said, "I know you're Senator Jones because he just like he said, right?" So, but he did answer the phone, and he didn't have my contact in yet, probably, and but he answered the phone, and we had the conversation. And once we talked for 10 seconds, yeah, oh yeah, Larry, yeah, I know who you are, yeah, right. So it was there. But when I first called, he had no idea who I was, but he answered the phone. Hello, this is Emmanuel. And wouldn't that be something different than what we're used to in the congressional district now, to actually have someone? Now, when he's congressman, I don't expect him to answer the phone, but he will have there. There you don't have that staff. You'll have that staff when you're the congressman. So you'll have a representative who will help you, and because you're going
The
to be representing a
congressperson,
500,000 people. You
the
know,
congressperson should be there. And I would
yeah, they
tell you
should be
that
there, but
those in the
you're gonna have a 500,000 constituents, and I don't personally expect you to answer the phone to all of
there's
us,
a
but
half
if you
million.
do, it'd be great.
You're correct. There's a 500,000 constituents that are there. And I wish all those 500,000 would vote, but unfortunately, you can see how the numbers kind of scale back. I would tell you the reason why I've been elected successively for these last 21, soon to be 22 years in the state senate is because of my outreach, and people know that I'm accessible. And to me, that's critically important. That's one of the things that's missing in the 13th.
When people know you care, it matters to them. It does, and that's why I want to talk about your bio a little bit, because you skip some things, right?
I
And
did.
yeah, you skip some things. So you skip the part about that you serve on a lot of nonprofits in Henry County, and that you have for years. You skip the fact that you'd served on the hospital authority for years,
Yes.
and this is besides you running a business and you serving in the state senate, but you also had served on the boards of nonprofits in your community,
Yes.
which you don't have to do, but you do. And what I'd like to talk to you about is healthcare a little bit, because you and I talked a little bit about healthcare before the show, and I think you have a unique insight of healthcare because where you served on the Henry County, the hospital in Henry County before it became
Mhm.
Piedmont. You served on that hospital authority, so you know the dire needs of healthcare. And in being in the Senate, you know of how we have these healthcare voids
Mhm.
throughout the state of
Absolutely.
Georgia. Uh, and being a federal representative and a congressman, I think you may have the ability to be able to invoke some change in that. So, what do you feel about healthcare in Georgia, and what would you like to do as our
I
congressman?
think the key word for healthcare in Georgia is accessibility. There's not enough, particularly when you look at um, South Georgia. Now, we are blessed up here in the urban areas of Georgia, but outside of the urban areas, there's a lot of deserts out there that we talk about, healthcare deserts, where some people, some communities may not even have an obstetrician because that person has had some very difficult births and they're not insurable anymore. And I would tell you, certainly up in this area, one of the things that we were able to do successfully is get the old hospital over there on East Atlanta Road um, reopened. Uh, and we did that by creating a partnership with Morehouse College and the authority over in South Fulton that owned that hospital. But that created a desert over there, particularly for people in need. As the cost of healthcare has risen, um, we need to look at the affordability factor and certainly the accessibility factor. And one of the things that I'm really, really disappointed, and I don't hear enough from from those that represent me at the federal level about how are we going to keep these subsidies in place? Because um, families are struggling now, even with the subsidies in place and all the other bills and expenses that they have. And I know from firsthand because I've been a car dealer for 33 years, and when I started my business, the average price of a car about $10,000 to $15,000. The average price of a car now is about $45,000 to $50,000. And how can people, in knowing that their wages have not risen as high as the prices of these commodities that we almost have to have in our great state? And that's one of the things that we really, really got to target is accessibility and affordability of healthcare in the great state of Georgia. And I wish that our governor had embraced Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act. He didn't, but Peach Care has been far worse, and a lot less people in the state have signed up for it.
Well, I have some friends that are brokers, and Georgia Access,
Mm-hmm.
they have not one good thing to say about it.
I,
Senator, just going to be real with you. I'm going to be in. They don't have one. And this year they told me they have a lot of their customers. They can't give you specifics because of HIPAA and all that, but they just say the problem they're having is that none of the providers and the doctors, none of them are signed up to be covered under the providers that are under Georgia Access. So you've got people that are buying who are going through Georgia Access, but none of their doctors are participating in the plan. I mean, and virtually you've got coverage but no coverage.
That's correct.
If they don't take your insurance, then you have insurance that is useless. Correct?
And let me just break it down. You're absolutely correct. Let me just break it down a little bit further, by the way. For those of us that have small businesses, small to medium-sized businesses, we know that the cost and impact of providing healthcare to our employees. You almost have to have it if you're going to be able to retain any kind of workforce. But I give you a good example of my company, where I have right at 50 employees down there. We had one employee, long-term employee that had been with me for a long time. He had a medical emergency. He was put on dialysis. He had a lot of medical bills that he incurred during the time, and unfortunately, he passed away. The next year when we had to renew our medical insurance, that carrier dropped my company because he said, just because we had one large bill, and I've said it once, I've said it twice, there should be a law against that. These carriers should not be able to shop around like that and move you around just because when healthcare that you're paying for and you need it and someone had to use it, now that becomes a burden. All of my other employees that's on the healthcare plan are forced to pay more.
Well, I told you I have a friend who owns a company, similar, and that person has a medical condition, and if they would put themselves on their policy, they would not. The company wouldn't cover them.
Yes.
So they have to. The owner of the business can't cover themselves under their own policy in order to provide coverage for the rest of the employees. And I know exactly what you're talking about. I manage a business myself. I have 40 average 30 or 40 employees at my division.
Mm-hmm.
We probably have 150 employees across the company. And you and I know that's not a lot, right? And you're in that group where that just goes up all the time. And then being on the Board of Education, I can tell you this, we have certain employees that we pay more a year in health coverage than they earn a year, Senator. We pay $24,000 a year for their coverage, and they don't even make that much a year. and the portion we pay for their health coverage is more than they earn a year. And then, that's just, and we're talking about an industry that doesn't just make millions of dollars. Their profits are billions of dollars.
Mhm.
Billions of dollars. So we have a problem here. And I think, and I've even talked about it that, I think the Affordable Care Act back in the day was the beginning of something. And I think neither party went to try to expand, fix, or make it more adaptable or friendly or user friendly for the patient, for the American citizen. And that's where I think we went wrong with it. So I love to see in Congress representing me, knowing that the healthcare system is broken,
It is.
and we need to look at it. And what do we need to do so that everybody deserves, the access to healthcare. And my wife had a serious medical issue last year. It was a heart issue, and
Mhm.
you're right. We're right here in the Atlanta metro area, and she had access to the best care possible. I, I, I would. If she would have been in South Georgia, in one of the rural counties, I would have been very concerned that would she have been able to got the level of care that she got being right here in the Atlanta area. I don't think we would have, and our outcome could have been a lot different than it was. But by the grace of God, we have the access to healthcare that we do, and you're in
Absolutely.
accessibility. It is
Mhm.
100% accessibility, Senator, and I think you're spot on about that. Well, as we're continuing our talk about the needs of people and stuff, you and I had a little talk about job creation and business
We did.
creation.
Yeah.
Why don't you talk to the people about that? Because you know a little bit about building a business.
And thank you. I do. Well, I've also been on this earth long enough to remember when there was an entity called Job Corps, and that entity specialized in teaching kids in grade school the basics about the trades. And I've had this opportunity to share these comments with several people from the unions as well to talk about we are not focusing enough on trades. It's as if the education system just automatically assumed that every child was on this career path to go on to college, and we know that not to be so. And I can tell you from my own experience in operating my business and hiring technicians that work in my body repair shop and certainly in my service department, that some of those technicians make in excess of six figures, in excess of $100,000 a year. Now, if you ask about the form of training that they had, most of it was OJT on the job, and a whole lot of it was through Ford Motor Company and other companies that are forced to fill that void that we used to have in our schools. When I was in high school, I was fortunate enough to take a course on automotive mechanics. I had a little 67 Chevrolet Chevelle, straight six in it. The rockers were knocking in it. We took the covers off, we took it apart, replaced the rockers. And I would tell you, despite all the academic accomplishments that I've had in my life, that one course made a greater impact on me than anything else. I didn't know then, back in the 70s, that I would be in the car business. But having that experience allowed me to at least speak the language and be able to communicate with those that have these specialties. And it also taught me the importance of being able to recruit those that have this specialized training. And I would tell you that I'm closer to the technicians in my shop today because I know what they went through to get in the position they're in than those that work perhaps in sales and wearing nice suits and stuff to work every day.
You're right, and I'll tell you, Senator, I went to a small junior college, back in the hills of West Virginia, and then I entered the workforce,
Sure.
right? So you talked about your background with your engineering and then the business, right? Well, I run a construction company, and we have a lot of engineering there that we do. and then I also do the business part of it. And I am self-taught on both sides because what I studied in college was not what I'm
Mhm.
doing today. So, and there's where, to me, it comes back down to providing a solid basic education. If you can read, you can do anything. You really
Mhm.
can. If you can read, you can teach yourself to do anything. So I mean, I taught myself my construction trade, and I taught myself how to run a
Wow.
business, and and people can do that, but we have to invest in people, and that's part of the jobs core you talked about,
Absolutely.
right?
Instead of
Invest. We have to invest in people, and we've got to realize it's not always
And the federal
college.
government has a
And
big role in all of that too, because our DOEs, our Department of Education, report back up through the federal government, and I don't see why we cannot. There's some discretion at the local level, but not much, and a little bit more discretion at the state level. But I believe that's something that the federal government needs to invest their dollars in, because those dollars are returned back many, many fold when you have people that have these technical skills, that are able to generate income and pay lots of money in taxes, and um, they're able to not just feed themselves and their families, but they can take a whole generation out of poverty just because that blue collar job that some people don't understand make a lot more than most white collar jobs, uh, kind of get in the way sometimes.
I mean, that, and you're 100% correct. And one of the things I think we should focus on more is just like the career academy that
Mhm.
Rockdale County has, and I know Henry County has a
Okay.
career academy also. So career academies are vital to this nation and vital to Georgia. I would like to see Georgia invest in career academies, and I think we would need to do the investment. I think we all need. I think we're going to need federal
Oh,
dollars to be able to do the investment we need to do in that. Because I think when you look at the career academies and what they offer, like Rockdale County has a welding program that is superior. I mean, it is a fantastic welding program. You and I both being in businesses that rely heavily on mechanics with that need to have welding skills and fabricating
mhm.
skills. You and I both, if you have someone who has welding skills and mechanical skills, they are a high six-figure employee. You and I both know
That's
that, and
correct.
that is, and that's just reality. And and we've got to realize you don't have to go to college to make six
Mhm.
figures, and we need to quit as a society making everybody think they've got to go be in $250,000 debt to be able to make a living. You don't. And I think with the investment in education and we invest in career academies, I think that's a way that we need to go in the future. And I think it would be a lot cheaper than the way we're doing investing in college right now. Degrees, and there's no job to go to after they get a degree. Do you have
You're
thoughts
absolutely correct. And
on that?
let me just kind of give you a great example of what I'm talking about. Southern Crescent College, by the way. Dr. Tavares is one of the leaders over there. Uh, I had an opportunity, this goes back a couple of years, by the way, to have a conversation with Dr. Tavares. I said, these technical schools need to invest more in this kind of mechanical education for young people. And he agreed with me. So one of the things that I got in the budget was $6 million for for the technical college, GPTC, I'm sorry, Georgia Perimeter Technical College in DeKalb County, to build a new facility. We had a groundbreaking ceremony. Several federal officials were there. It came in, that project, it really turned into a project where I got DeKalb County involved. The state of Georgia put in $6 million, and Congressman Nate Johnson was there, and the federal government contributed money as well. Because I started beating down the bushes and said, here's what we need to do. In the groundbreaking ceremony we had a couple of years ago, um, everybody lauded the work that we did in pulling together this public-private partnership and able to enable GPTC to grow to where it is today. And I would tell you that they trained most of the linemen for Georgia Power. over at GPTC, Georgia Pacific Technical College, trained most of the bus drivers for MARTA. And they were doing that work already. Most of the over-the-road truck drivers with their licenses that they're required to have, they were already teaching those courses. We expanded it because they were just so successful and they didn't have enough space and facility to create more opportunities. Dr. Devara sent me an invitation a couple of weeks ago, inviting me to the grand opening. And I told him, Doc, I just have one request. I just need to have my name on one of those rooms inside underneath the desk somewhere. But that is a success story of what we're talking about, where had I not approached DeKalb County and asked, Michael Thurman was the CEO at the time, to get involved, that would not have happened. Had I not reached out to our congressional folks and asked Congressman Hank Johnson to get involved, that would not have happened. But we made it happen.
Are you there?
And that center automobile mechanics program down there, you talk about welding. Not only are they welding metal, but also welding stainless as well. And that program has continued to grow because we secured funds along with my colleague, Republican colleague, State Senate. We secured the funds from the state to invest in those kind of resources. The kind of work I've done for my life in the past 33 years, I have a great appreciation for those that can work with their hands. And another resource that I tapped into in order to provide these kind of opportunities has been the unions in Georgia. I've had several conversations with them, and we've tried to get an incubation program in Henry County off the ground. It hasn't happened yet, but I can tell you, I'm not going to give up.
You know, Senator, I think one of the things as constituents, what we need to realize when we look at electing individuals that we want us to represent us, we need to look at that person's background. When we want someone to focus on business development and job creation, then I think we need to elect someone who has built a business and created jobs, right? So,
Yes.
You know, when we're concerned about healthcare, we need to elect someone who has been involved in healthcare and knows the needs of the citizens and knows the shortcomings of healthcare. And I think when we look at your background and your pedigree, you know, you fit that bill very well. I mean, and I think that's what people need to look at when they're asking questions. And we have these other 14, 15 people running for this seat. Do they have the experience in the legislature? And that's the one thing that people have got to realize. You're not going to be a rookie, right? So you may not have been in the United States Congress, but you have been in a legislative body. And Georgia is one of the toughest legislative bodies that's out there. I mean, you can talk to people all around, and they'll tell you that the Georgia legislature is a tough legislative body to be in, okay? And it's because of the uniqueness of the governor's powers and such. I mean, and it's a very unique legislative body. So you've got that experience with building the business, the engineering experience, the military experience with the serving on the nonprofits. When we look for candidates that are those all-around candidates, they need to take a very strong look at you, Senator, because you are a candidate that checks all those boxes. And when you come look at the accessibility factor, and we've not talked about it, but I got a feeling you'd end up being one of those congressmen that come here on the weekends and have town halls.
I would tell you, Larry, that some of my best work I've done in the Senate these last 21, soon to be 22 years, have come from ideas that I've gotten from the constituents that I represent. If you listen, they would tell you. As you know, I was in the town hall over in Rockdale County along with State Representative Taylor, and we heard a lot of talk about data centers. We went back, we met with the president of Georgia Power, And shortly thereafter, Georgia Power came out with this announcement about their freezing rates, and they're even trying to push rates down. And they are also looking at exactly where these data centers are going to be located or relocated.
Yeah.
That's because I heard the voice of the public loud and clear. Data centers are a problem. Most of which there's just not enough information out there about these centers and the impact it's going to have on their quality of life. And no one wants to be, as you say, economically in, should I say, economically unsafe in their home
Yep.
when they build something close to them that could cause a hazard. That's happened too often in Rockdale County. With the biotech lab over there, I tell you, I felt it where I live as well. And I remember the hearing that we had at the Capitol, and those over there was short and forthcoming with any answers. That's a missed opportunity. And I know the people in Rockdale County because a lot of them are my friends. I know them. Again, I'm not far from Rockdale County, and I interact with all of the legislators in that area as well. But that's something that we really, really got to look deeper into, because I feel in my heart there's some kind of cover up. And what they're covering up and what chemicals they were stored in that building, what chemicals caused this kind of contamination over there, we still don't know today.
No, and I told you, I mean, that's from, and I had some independent researchers that looked at things and this and that. And, from what I've discussed with them, one of the top 5 worst biological hazards that's ever happened in the country,
That's
right
the word.
here. One of the top 5, right, that's ever happened. And you wouldn't even know that it happened. You got no acknowledgement from the state. No, I know we had the hurricane and all that stuff going on at the same time, but the governor didn't acknowledge it. You had no high level member in the legislature. I mean, nobody. You would have thought that it never happened. No. You would have never thought that it ever happened, right? And that was not acceptable. I think you and I discussed it. Not acceptable.
That's why I say it smacks of a cover up for me, because we have EPD at the state level, and that EPD interacts with the EPA at the federal level as well. And those answers that they haven't even provided those of us in the General Assembly with answers either. It smacks of a cover up, but eventually, it may be through discovery, those answers are going to come out.
Well, I'm just going to throw something out there. I've got some additional friends and some different people that have done some research and some stuff, and talked to some other attorneys and their possible connection to DOD. Possible Department of Defense connections. So if there were possibly that, then that would explain a lot. It would explain a lot, right?
So we do have some houses over here.
Yes, it would explain a lot. So, but it was totally unacceptable. Well, I think that we've discussed some of those. Do you have any other major issues that you think are important to the constituents of the 13th, other than the healthcare, job creation, and just representation? And like I said, you mentioned the biolab, about having representation and finding out what's going on. What are there any other key points of your election, of your campaign, you'd like to bring up to the folks in Rockdale at this time?
I think the most important issue that I can bring up, I kind of hinted on it during this conversation we had, is I'm the kind of candidate that's going to listen to the public. I don't come in with my own agenda. My agenda over these last 22 years, certainly, constituents of the 10th district have been built around listening to the public. I have, from the moment I got into the General Assembly 22 years ago, I was a student by the name of Jamal Russell that had been prosecuted because he had consensual sex with a girl 2 years his junior. The legislature changed the law other than the Supreme Court, but they didn't grandfather those kids that already been prosecuted. I took it upon myself to introduce legislation that would allow those kids that had been prosecuted under the old law, because he changed it to go back to grandfather. I would tell you uh, that was my homecoming, if you will. That was an introduction to politics in the state of Georgia. I never gave up on that kid. And let me tell you, we got him out not because my bill passed. That was President Pro Tem Eric Johnson from Savannah who blocked it at the last moment, by the way. But we went back to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, thanks to Justice Leo Sears and Benham and others that was on there, agreed with us. And that's how Genola Wilson got out. I would tell you that in my 21 years, I've done a lot of work in the school system in terms of, we don't hear any talk about zero tolerance anymore, and kids being prosecuted just because they had something that could be considered a weapon. I changed that law, and the governor, and I've had more bills passed and signed into law. We don't have any hard facts that do it. I do know there are probably other Democrat that served up there during this period. I've had bills signed by, I've only served under Republican governments. And Governor Perdue signed that bill into law, and I put one word in that zero tolerance law that stopped kids from being prosecuted, and that word was intent. It basically said you cannot prosecute these kids unless there's an intent on their part to do harm. PBIS, positive behavior intervention and support. I am the father. I passed that legislation 8 years ago. In the bill, the speaker's bill that we passed this year that dealt with school safety. And I held a study committee on school safety right in the middle of this shooting at the Appalachia, by the way. And we were caught in the middle of it, and I was determined to get something passed. And I will tell you that most of the time we passed legislation that we not have a name on. But I gave my work products to Speaker Burns, and I asked him to consider putting it in his bill because I knew the House was in the bill. So in the bill that we passed this year, 2025, by the way, that dealt with school safety, providing security in school that's been held as a model across the country. Not only is my PBIS going to do it, but also the recommendation of what to do when kids transfer from one school system to another, and those records dealing with their disciplinary action do not follow them. So you know this kid had all kind of problems up there in Appalachia. The FBI interviewed him, the sheriff in this old school system that interviewed him, but yet when he transferred to a new school system, none of that information followed. It does today because of the legislation I introduced. I can go back and name countless other pieces of legislation I've worked on that deals with education, with healthcare, and job opportunity. And I'll tell you one thing I'm really, really proud of. It's over on Snafford Road in DeKalb County, close to where I live. There's a YMCA when COVID got shut down. Metro Atlanta YMCA shut down the YMCA over there. And I took it upon myself to meet with the president of YMCA and ask her, what is it that you need to do for this center?
Senator, do you have something in the background running?
I do not. I just have the old computer running.
So there is background noise. So it may be a fan or something in the computer.
It is a fan. And I was able to get
Yep.
$2 million for the YMCA over at Snapping Road. And President Coons of the YMCA, we opened the Y. And not only did we open it, but she shared with me that Senator, we have some matching funds where we're going to invest another $3 to $4 million into the YMCA to expand it. And that's the same work that we need to do to capture kids early on to make sure they have an enriching experience like I did. I was orphaned when I was 11 years old. And I remember the Butler Street YMCA. I lost my father when I was 9, and 2 years later my mother passed away, and they left me and my 5 other brothers and sisters alone. So the YMCA and Butler Street made an impact on my life. And there are a lot of kids out there that need this kind of structured play, if you will. And the Y is built to do. My whole career in general assembly and built around legislation that passed recently, the drag racing, rolling tracks, which is considered a model, by the way. I could go on, and I'm one of those candidates who's running on the record and not running away from the record. So I would challenge any of those that run in this race to look at my record, and I would be willing to debate anywhere, anytime, the things that I've done these last 21, soon to be 22 years in the state assembly. And that's just part of it. That's just part of it.
Well, I'll tell you, Senator, I think what we'll do is I think, some of the folks in this chat are really active over here in the county. And I think what we'll do is I think we'll try to get something organized and invite you
I would
over.
love to.
And we'll have some sort of town hall event and, and let you talk. I'm going to be honest
I'll
with
let the
you. With 15 people running, there's too many people to have a town hall. I be honest, I'm not interested in that. Right? I think we'd have to do some sort of poll and then get the top 5 because not 15. I mean, but yeah, I think we're good. So if you've got a closing comment, make a closing comment, and we're gonna finish the show tonight. I think the folks have heard a lot and a lot to digest, and I think they'll be what's going on. Clayton, he talked about, I want to summarize, the senator talked about a lot of the legislation that he had got introduced and passed, and some of it was regarding school safety, and it was also regarding legislation that was political prison reform, not really prison reform, but it would be more judiciary charging reform on how people are charged, and then he was responsible for a lot of the language as far as in making sure that that a child's records follow them to schools. I'm very familiar with that, Senator, being on the board with all that new requirements and such, and it is a big help for it helps everybody. At the end of the day, helps the student and it helps the facility that's going to be getting the student, because they all know what they're getting,
know where it came
right?
From.
Yes, they know where they came from. But yeah, I mean, I think we got a lot to digest. I think we've found out that Senator Jones is a very well-rounded candidate and would be very qualified to serve us here in the 13th district, in my humble opinion.
And given an opportunity, I would do just that. Service is my mantra. And as my fraternity says, service above self. That's one of the things that we've always believed in.
Gotcha. So do you have anything else you'd like to say in closing?
Well, thank you, by the way, for this opportunity to come and at least have a conversation about some of the issues pressing in our community, particularly in the Rockville community. I would only ask that those that are listening and those that participate in this look at my record. Not only look at my record, you can look at how the work that I've done over these last 33 years of my business, or even 21, soon to be 22 years in the state General Assembly. I am one of those candidates that's not running away from their record. I am running on my record. And I would encourage you to reach out to me. If I could, I'd give them my cell number. I am accessible. If you have any questions, I'd love to come out and have an opportunity to meet at any association meeting that you have. In the much smaller settings, you get an opportunity to really delve into the things that the candidate thinks about. And for me, I found that to be the best learning opportunity as well, rather than in a much larger stadium setting where people just over talking over each other. And I'll be more than willing to do that anytime, anywhere. I talked about accessibility and affordability. I am the candidate that will be accessible, and certainly the issues that are impacting our economy and our homes, those are issues that we need to talk about and ensure that we find a way so that people can afford just the very basics in their lives, sending their kids through college and being able to afford transportation. I have been in business for myself. I've made for 33 years, and I've made payroll for my employees every single payroll cycle. And I understand the cyclicality of businesses and the economy, and I think we're in one of those now. But that's because of of a president who is seem to be untethered to the truth. And I say all the time, I wait for the whiplash because I don't know what direction the current president is taking this country. But we have an opportunity next year to elect a Congress so that we know, and Congress can really get much more involved in putting guardrails around the executive branch. Because I still believe in good government, I still believe in separation of powers, and I still believe in this great country that we call our home, the United States of America, and Rockdale County, Henry County, and Gwinnett, and Clayton, and Newton County as well. It's all part of the 13th Congressional District. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you. If you'll just hang on, I'm going to say bye to the folks, and then we'll check out, and then you and I will still be on
Yes,
a
sir.
little after. So, folks, I want to thank you all for joining us tonight, and I want to thank the senator for being on the show. And then I'm going to extend another invitation to the senator to come on in May when voting starts. So, be a very important time, right when early voting starts. We'll have the senator come on again if he wants to, and at that time, it's when the it hits the road, right? So it'll be time for that. So we'll have the senator come on again. He's agreed to, so we'll have him on in the beginning of May, and that way he'll be able to come on, and you guys can ask some questions after doing a bunch of research and deciding some things. And thank you a lot. So, guys, I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us tonight. Tell your friends to go back and watch the recording of the show. Tell them, about the show, and that, the senator was on running for Congress, and it will impact them here in Rockdale County. Thank you. Good night. And I will see each and every one of you next Sunday, 8 p.m. on Speak Your Mind with Larry.